All right, seems like most of the people that are coming are here now. So we're gonna start today's lesson. Today we're gonna be talking about Python loops, and Python has two primitive loop commands. The first is a while loop, and the second is a for loop. And both of these loops are used for iterating through sets of data, but they have different ways of functioning. So firstly, the while loop is the first loop we're going to learn about. And with the while loop, we can execute a set of statements as long as the condition is true. And so so in this first example of a while loop, we have I is equal to 1. And then while is how you start a while loop. I is less than 6. Then we'll print I, and it will add 1 to I each time. So as long as I is less than 6 every single time, then this while loop will print I. So as you see, I will print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But once it adds 1 to 5, so like 5 plus 1 is 6, then 6 is no longer less than 6, and therefore it'll exit the while loop, and that'll be it. And one important thing to note about while loops is that remember to increment whatever whatever like you're putting into the while loop. Like in this case, you need to increment I, since if you don't increment I, the loop will repeat forever. Since if I stayed at 1 and we didn't like increment this, then basically it's just gonna keep on printing 1 over and over again. So if you print this, it's just, as you can see, that prints forever. So we have to stop the code. And then next, one statement that comes with the while loops are break statements. And so break statements can stop the loop even if the condition is true. And so here, an example is the same code as before, except we've added this one line. If I is equal to 3, then it'll break. And this basically means that as I is increasing, so I becomes 1, 2, and then 3. Once it hits 3, it'll satisfy this conditional, and it'll break out of this for loop, and it will not like repeat another iteration. So it'll go 1, 2, 3, and then after prints 3, it checks, oh, look, I is equal to 3, and then it'll just break out of the while loop. And then there's so note that order actually matters with the while loop. And if we switch to print I to after the if statement, then it won't even print 3, because as soon as I becomes 3, it'll first check if it's equal to 3, and then it'll print. But in the first case, it'll print before it checks. And so remember that when you're using a break statement, make sure you put it in the right part of the code, since order does matter, and it'll change your result. And another statement that you can use in a while loop is a continue statement. This one is less absolute than the break statement, and with the continue statement, you can stop the current iteration and then continue to the next iteration. Right. So rather than breaking the whole while loop, just continue to the next iteration. And so in this case, we start with I is equal to 0, and we have the same exact code, except this time, instead of the break statement, we change the break statement to a continue statement. So this will just print everything except for 3, because once I is equal to 3, then it'll just continue and then go on to the next iteration rather than printing 3. And then lastly is the else statement. Is just like you can use if else, you can also use like while else. And this basically just means that as soon as the while loop is not satisfied, it'll print something. And this is a good way to indicate like when the while loop has finished, just so you have an indication of, just to know when you did finish your while loop. And then it's good to see like a physical output in the, in that in this terminal. So So we can practice some challenge questions now that we've talked about these. While loops, so the first challenge question is to print the first 10 multiples of 7 using a while loop. And so if I'll start you guys off a little bit. So we'll let I is equal to, let's say 1, and then somehow use a while loop, and then try to print try to print the first 10 multiples of 7. And you guys can like DM me like done or anything when you guys are finished. We'll go over this question at 7:15, so you guys have plenty of time. Okay, this one's pretty basic, so I'll just go over it like 2 minutes early. But uh, so hopefully everyone's at least finished now or close to finish, and I'll just finish up and show you guys the solution. So in this case, we'll do for I is less than or equal to 7 because we want this to repeat 7 times. And then every single time we will want to print I times 7. We want this to be 10, so because we want to print the first 10 multiples. So we want it to do it 10 times. And since we want multiples of 7, we want to print I times 7 each time. And that's what we get here. While I is less than or equal to 10, print I times 7. And don't forget, we need to increment I by 1 each time. I plus is equal to 1. And when we run this, we'll get 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, 63, 70. And all of these are multiples of 7, so we did it correctly. All right, for the second question, using a while loop, calculate the sum of all numbers from 1 to a given number. Oh, also, does everyone understand how to do this first question? Is there any questions about any remaining questions about the first one? Okay, great. Then we'll move on to the second one then. Then this one is a little bit harder. In this case, using a while loop, calculate the sum of all numbers from 1 to a given number. So like um let's say the number we want to calculate the sum of everything up to 10, which I think that's I believe that's 55. It should be inclusive, yes. So yeah, so it should be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 all the way dot 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 plus 10. So this one's a little bit harder, so I'll give you guys like 7 minutes to do this one. I'll talk about it at 7:22. If anyone needs any hints, make sure to ask me, and I'll point you guys towards the right direction. So all right, good luck. Good luck on this question. And yep, I'll just mute and then tell me whenever you guys are done. Okay, has everyone finished this question? If not, you guys should tell me so I can give you guys a little bit more time. Um, no, wait, okay, so I'll assume everyone's finished. So I'll just show you guys the answer to this one. And to do this, it's easiest to assign a second variable called sum. That is what we're going to add on to. So then while num is less than or equal to and then also like a like a starting variable, I guess. I suppose, okay, so we'll start with I is equal to like 1 because that's what we want to first add. 1 plus something, so like while I is less than or equal to 10, which is what we want. And then we'll do sum plus is equal to 1, and then I plus is equal to 1. And this way, sorry, sum plus is equal to I, and then so this way, it'll first, sum will first add 1, and then I will turn it to 2, and then you add 2 to sum, and you add 3 to sum, all the way until you hit 10. And then in the end, if we print the value of sum, we should get 55, and there it is. This is a little bit easier with the for loops, but it's still possible with while loops. And oh, it should, yeah, that's right. It should not be 10. It should be I is less than or equal to num, because and then if we change num to like 11, it'll be 66, and then all the way, and if we change it to like 9, it should be 45. So yeah, good catch. Thanks for telling me. So um, that's basically what it is. How you sum all the numbers from 1 to a given number. So yeah, I suppose you can say you guys understand while loops, and so we can go on to for loops now. And so a for loop is used for iterating over a sequence. Like it can be either like a list, a tuple, a dictionary, set, or string. So we already talked about strings. We haven't really talked about tuples, but they're pretty much the same thing as lists, except they're not changeable. Um, and then there's also, we've talked about mainly lists and strings, which are the two probably most common ones. Uh, and so this is a little bit different than while loops, because while loops just keep on doing something as long as the condition is true. And then for loops are used to usually iterate through a specific set, like it says. So in this first example, um, we're iterating through fruits, and for x in fruits will print x. So uh, for every value in fruits, we'll just print it out. And one major difference between for loops and while loops is that this variable here is it's like it's basically you don't have to have like x predefined. As with the while loop, you have to have like a predefined variable. So if we go up here, like let's say I didn't have an I here, then this would basically the code wouldn't really work, but you have to predefine what I is every single time. For a for loop though, you don't have to, and this I think this value just assumes to be 0, and sorry, so in this case x represents like every value that's in fruit, so it'll first be apples, then banana, then cherry, as it'll print out, and you don't have to define x before you run the for loop. And like I said, for loops do not require an indexing variable to be set beforehand. And as you see, we don't have x predefined. So in the first example is looping through a list. And then the second example, we can also loop through a string. So a string is basically just a list of single characters. And so you can loop through them just as you could loop through a list. And for x in banana will print x. And this will print out every single individual letter. So it'll print B, A, N, A, N, A. So just a quick challenge question to practice with for loops and looping through an array. Use a loop to display elements from a given list present at the odd index positions. So if I give you my list is equal to this value 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, all the way to 100, then you should give the output should give me 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100 because these are at the odd indexes. That's index 1, 3, 5, 7, and then 9. So I'll give you guys until like 7:33, 7:33, 7:34 to try this one. And remember that you can use the length. So basically you can use the length function to get the length of the string. And essentially you can use that to find out which ones are at the odd indexes. So I'll let you guys try this one, and yeah, we'll reconvene at 7:34. Oh, actually, I just realized I think I need to talk about something before we start this question. So that's my bad. I just want to quickly talk about the range function, and so I think you'll need this for the question. I just realized, and the range function basically loops through a set of code a specified number of times, and x will start the range starts from 0 by default. So for x in range 6, it'll start printing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rather than 1 through 6, it prints 0 through 5. And that's the example here. And then the range and so how the range function defaults to 0 as a starting value, but it's possible to start from a different value by adding a second parameter. The first parameter is the start parameter. The second parameter is the end parameter. And just like when you're slicing strings, you do not include the second number. So this will only print 2 through 5. So it'll be, as you see here, it prints 2, 3, 4, 5, but doesn't actually print 6. So it's the second value is always exclusive and the first value is always inclusive. And the range function defaults to increment the sequence by 1. So it goes from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. However, it's possible to increment the value by like 2s or 3s, even as high as you want, by adding a third parameter, which is the step size. And the step size here is a 3, and the start value is 2, and the end value is 30. And so this will start by printing 2, and then it'll end at 29, but it'll move in multiples of 3. So it'll print 2, 5, 8, 11, all the way up to 29 in this case. So as you see here, it prints 2 through 29, but in steps of 3. So sorry a little bit about the confusion, but you'll need the range function, especially this. If you want the code to iterate a specific number of times, you'll need that for the question above. And so, firstly, does anyone have any questions about the range function? Since I might have gone through it a little bit fast, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. All right, cool. So if we don't have any questions, we can go back to this one to do a little bit of practice. And so once again, we we can look at this one. By using the length function, we can get the total number in this. And then using the range function, you can iterate through it that many times. And by doing that, you can pick out all the odd indexes and then print those specific ones out. So I'll give you guys to 740 to try this one. This one is it's quite a bit more difficult than the two other ones we've done before. So you guys get some extra time. So yeah, good luck on this question. All right, it's about 7:40 now, so hopefully y'all are done with this question, but if not, I'll show you guys the answer to this one. So this one requires is a little bit more challenging than the ones before. So I'll just walk through my thoughts on this one. So if we want to get the ones only at the odd index, then rather than iterating through every specific item, then we have to iterate through the indexes of every item. Since if we just iterate through like the 10 or the 20 itself, then that wouldn't tell us anything about the index. So how we would do this is we would we would iterate through every single index by creating for loops, so for I in range. And what we have to put in here is we want to put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We want to put in 10, so it iterates 10 times. However, 10 is like it's a literal, so which means that it's like fixed, and we want like a variable, right? So we want it to be like we want it to change if my list was changed. So if we just had 10, the code wouldn't work if we changed my list to we added like 110 to my list, because then rather than 10 items, then we would have 11 items. So what we should do is what we want is we want how many items are in my list, and that's when the length function comes in, and we use for I in range length of my list to find the number of elements. And then after this, we want to check if it's an odd index or not. So if let's say if I and then mod 2 is equal to 1, this is how we check if something's odd. Then we will print out let's say my list of I. So like the element at index I in the list, my list. So if we run this code, this will print 20, 40, 60, 80, and 10. And that's basically my thought process. We want to first create a loop that iterates through every single index, and then check if it's odd. So that's the easy part. And for every item, we just print out the item at that index. So there we go. And so next we're going to talk about break statements. So this is the same break statement as in a while loop. It does the same thing. And it basically just terminates it ends the loop, and this break statement will so for fruits equals apples, bananas, cherries. We'll print X every single time, but then once we hit banana, then we'll break, and you see it'll print apple and banana, and then the code will end. And like I said, order does matter. So if we take a look at the second code, this one only prints apple, since it checks first for banana and then it prints. But in this case, it prints first and checks for banana. So just make sure that when you're writing for loops and while loops, that keep in mind that the order that you write your code in does matter. And this is pretty much we've gone through everything that we need to. So can we use range 1 comma length of my list comma 2? That also works as well, using like a step size of 2. So that's actually a pretty like smart way to do it. And then so yeah, we can do that, and I'll show you guys how that works. So that's a really good catch, Hanyu. So how you do that is you write the same thing. So for I in range, and then 1 comma length of my list, and then comma 2. And then in this case, oh sorry, I accidentally shift enter. Print, and then my list of I. And this it's one line shorter. And basically how this works is that it starts at index 1, and then if you remember, we talked about step size with using range, and essentially this will go like a step size of 2, and it'll go from 1 and then go to 3 and then go to 5 and go to 7 and then all the way up to length of my list. So it'll basically grab every single odd index inside of my list. So if we print this, this also prints the same thing, and it's one line shorter. So that's a really good catch, and that's a very smart way to do it. Um, so this is relatively challenging. There's a lot of ways to get to the same solution. So um, some of you might have had like code that's a little bit different than either of these, but as long as it prints out the correct answer, then that's cool. So as I was talking about break statements, um, as I was talking about break statements, these do the same thing as in a while loop. They just end the they just stop the loop, and then continue statements are also used in for loops, and continue statements do the same thing. Once again, it just goes on to the next iteration. This one just basically does not print banana. It'll print apple, and then if it's banana, then it won't print anything, and then it'll just print cherry next. So you see, this will print apple and then cherry, and um, yeah, that's pretty much it. I already talked about the range function and how it just some important notes that it starts at 0 and it does not actually include the value that's in here. So it goes from 0 through 5 rather than 1 through 6. And in addition, you can create two parameters, start and stop one, and it's inclusive of the first value, exclusive of the second one. And then lastly, we can use step size to print out we can use step size to print out to like iterate through something like with a certain like multiples. Like instead of just incrementing up by 1, you would increment up by 3 or 2 or 4 or whatever value you want. And then just like how we use else statements with while loops, you can do it with the for loop as well. For x in range 6, this will print 0 through 5, and then once it's finished, it'll just print finally finished. And then an important note is that the else block will not be executed if the loop is stopped by a break statement. And so in this case, if x is equal to 3, it'll break. So it'll print 1 and then 2, and then it won't print anything else. So sorry, it'll print 0, 1, and 2, and then it will not print finally finished since we have a break statement here. And essentially this is kind of all part of the for loop. So the break statement will also break out of the else and it won't print finally finished either. So that's pretty much all the topics to discuss for loops. And so we're just going to do a little bit of practice at the end. And the first example we're going to try is we're going to write a Python program to count the number of even and odd numbers from a series of numbers. And so we have here this should be a list, not a tuple, but yeah, so we have here a list of numbers 1 through 9, and we want it to print the number of evens, which is 5, and we want it to print the number of odd numbers, which is 4. So you guys can decide if you guys want to use a while or for loop. I would probably recommend for loop because I think it's a little bit easier. And since it's a list and typically for loops are good for iterating through sets like that. So I'll give you guys like 5 minutes to do this one and we'll reconvene at 7:53. Okay, if anyone's done with this question, you guys can just tell me done so we can go over this one really quick because we got 3 more left to go. This one's probably the easiest out of the 3. And so we'll quickly talk about this one. Okay, so a couple people are done. And so we'll talk about this one real quick. We're using a for loop. We can just use like for num in numbers, which is our list. And I should probably copy and paste this so it is actually defined because it's commented right now. So yeah, so we have here defined numbers, and for num in numbers, what we would do is we would check whether num is even or not. So if let's say you we'll define a variable like evens, and then another variable, we'll set them equal to 0, and then another variable odds. And then if I will check if num is even, then so like num mod 2 is equal to 0. Then what we will do is we'll add 1 to the evens number, but if not, then we'll add 1 to the odd because there's only 2 options, odd or even. So evens plus equal to 1, and then else we'll add odds plus is equal to 1. And at the very end of the for loop, and remember we do this outside of the for loop, we will print, let's say we'll print out what we need to, what they want us to print, we'll print out number of evens, and then plus whatever we got. So plus like the number of evens is evens, and then we'll also print out the number of odd numbers. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I need to convert this to a string first. Str, and then okay, that's not interesting. Oops. So yeah, you have to convert the strings first. Oh wait, string object's not callable. That's weird. That's plus. I'm not sure why it's giving me an error here, but yeah, it should work. As I'm not sure. Maybe I'll refresh the page and I'll see. Evens plus equal to 1. Okay, let me just try something. We'll just print out evens. Yeah, okay. I'm not sure why it's not letting me turn it into a string, but that's fine. We'll just print out these two. That's the number of evens and that's the number of odds. So that's the first challenge question. And then second challenge question is write a Python program to reverse a string. And so this one, try to use like a for loop or something like that. Try to use a for loop. There is a way to do it with like one line, but if any of you are aware of that, don't use that method because we're trying to practice for loops. And you just try to use like a for loop and iterate through each letter and then print it out. So I'll give you guys till the end of class, 8 p.m. to do this, and I'll go over the answer then. So this one, so yeah, just try this one and best of luck. All right, cool. Uh, so for this one, it seems like some people are done already, so I'll go over this one. Let's say we have like my string, um, my string is equal to hello world, and we want to reverse this. We want to start from the end. And one way to do this is using a for loop. So for I, for like character in my string, we will well actually first we should start with like a like a final string, uh like a final, or like let's call this reversed reverse string, and then we'll make that an empty string, and then we'll just keep on adding to reverse string specific characters that we want. And so first we want to add what we're gonna do is we're gonna first start by adding h. So char is first gonna be h, but then we want to add e, but um we want e to be before h, right? And we want l to be before h and e. So how we're gonna do this is we are going to do reversed string, and then plus let's say plus equal to character. Actually, it should be character plus is equal to reverse string. So character plus is equal to reverse string, and then we'll just print out reverse string again. Oh, let me see. Reversed string is equal to reverse is equal to character plus reversed string, and that will work. Yeah. So basically, what this does is it starts with an empty string, and then you're gonna add h to it. And note that the order for this does matter. If we first add character before we add reverse string, if we concatenate these in this like opposite order, then we'll get a reverse string. But however, if we concatenate these in this order, then it'll first do h, and then e will be added after h, but we want e to be added before h. So this will just print hello world, but we want the opposite, and we'll first do character and then reverse string. So that's how you reverse the string with the for loop. So that question, there's two more questions left. One's about the Fibonacci sequence, another is if it's prime. So I'll paste a link to that to you guys if you guys want to try it out after class. After this club, but let's see, copy anyone with the link, and then I'll share it to everyone here. So there's a couple of questions on there, two more questions that we didn't get to, but so far that's what for loops are and while loops. And if you guys want some extra practice, you guys could try these two. You can also use go to somewhere called codingbat.com and go to Python. This website has a really good practice questions that you can try that'll really elevate your like coding skills, at least for beginners. And anyways, that should be the end of our class. And anyways, thanks to everyone for tuning in. Yeah, check out the Colab I sent to you guys if you guys want some extra practice to do the last two questions. And check out CodingBat if you want some further practice. And so hope you guys have a great weekend. Have a happy Halloween, and see you guys next week.